Como estas, comrades and fellow Valverdians? It is I, Frank, here to attempt the inaugural episode of Verde Broadcasting Reviews Games. It's not going to be called that. I haven't had a chance to workshop the title. I haven't even really slept in the last week. I've been recovering from the world events illness. There you go, that'll duck under the algorithms. Anywho, here we go for the Streets of Rage 4 review on PC. It's also available on the PS4 and Xbox One. Full disclosure, we were provided with Steam codes for this game by the people at .emu. For those of you who aren't familiar with the franchise, Streets of Rage debuted in 1991 on the Sega Mega Drive in Japan and Europe, or the Genesis in North America. Streets of Rage 2 came out a year later and remains to this day one of my favourite games of all time. The third entry came out in 94 and was notorious for having a janked up difficulty level compared to the Japanese version in terms of North America and Europe. Basically it was completely nails, and I don't think I ever managed to complete it without cheese. Maybe it's because it's too hard, maybe I'm terrible at video games, who knows. Anyway, enough rambling bollocks, here we go. When I first heard about Streets of Rage 4 coming out, I did a little wee in my pants. I was well excited. You have to understand, I'm a massive fan of the franchise and the whole genre of scrolling beat-em-ups in general. My whole life when I was a kid playing video games, it was all about Streets of Rage, Final Fight, Double Dragon, all that kind of stuff. The first obvious thing when you look at Streets of Rage 4 is how it appears. The graphics are more of the cel-shaded variety compared to the classic 16-bit pixel art kind of look. Personally, some people might have a problem with this if they're purists. For me, I think it looks beautiful. Animation-wise, it's super smooth. It really works for me. There are some unlockable characters. When I say unlockable characters, some of the old school characters, some of the old school looks of existing characters in this are unlockable in the original 16-bit style, which does look kind of cool, but also kind of looks a bit weird in terms of out of place with the rest of the background, but that's more of a personal preference thing. Just as a side note, the PC I'm running this on, I ain't got a top-of-the-range PC. I've got an RX 570 GPU, I've got an i3 quad-core, I've got 8 gigs of RAM. So, not particularly high-end, and the game ran super smooth and super fine for me. No glitches or crashes or nothing. It's all good. Good frame rate too. The soundtrack I liked fine. I know, for example, the Streets of Rage 2 soundtrack has got a lot of love historically with a lot of fans. This soundtrack was mostly composed by Olivier Derivière. Some additional compositions from Yuzo Kishiro, Motohiro Kawashima, Yoko Shimura, Keiji Yamagishi, and Harumi Fujita, and also Das Mortal and Grandislava as well. It's a solid soundtrack, it does what it's supposed to, I got no complaints. I mean, maybe not quite as iconic as what people are used to, but maybe that's the nostalgia talking, so that's, again, that's down to personal opinion, but I liked it fine. In terms of story, here's a quick rundown, it's quite simple. I mean, the Streets of Rage franchise has never been exactly known for their in-depth storytelling. Mr. X from the first trilogy is obviously long dead, and this game takes place 10 years after Streets of Rage 3. Essentially, you have the twin kids of Mr. X, it's Mr. Y and Ms. Y, and they're kind of little irritating hipster millennial bastards who look like they just stepped out of an anime. And I've got that spoilt brat thing about them, which is good for this kind of game because you do want to pommel their faces in. Streets of Rage 4 has 12 stages to it, which is a fair bit longer than the previous games. I decided to start playing solo on the normal difficulty level, and I died a lot. And I don't consider myself terrible at these kind of games, but I did get the impression, I mean, don't get me wrong, any kind of scroll and beat 'em up, it's always way more fun multiplayer, and I think that is the best way to play them. I do think, though, I felt a bit handicapped playing it on my own. I felt like I was playing one player through a game that was designed for more than one player. Again, could be me being awful, but I found even on normal difficulty level that I died a lot. Throughout the course of the game, we see a lot of the resurfacing of the classic enemies. It's clear to me that Lizard Cube and Guard Crush Games are obviously massive fans of the original franchise, and you can tell there's real love and care and attention put into everything. There's also a variety of new enemies that fit really quite seamlessly into the existing Streets of Rage universe. boss fights are a varied bag. It's weird. I mean, I didn't necessarily feel personally that they went up in ascending order of difficulty. I actually had more trouble with some of the bosses midway through the game than I did later on. Although the last boss, I won't spoil anything for you, but that's bastard tricky. Of course, I'd be remiss in this review if I didn't mention the character roster that you get to play as well as returning favourites Axel Stone and Blaze Fielding, who are kind of, your all-rounders, give or take. You have got, replacing the slow strong character and fast weak character, respectively, you've got Floyd, who's a big cybernetic arm Samoan guy and not at all like Jax from Mortal Kombat. Yeah, he packs a massive punch, but he's painfully slow. And the faster, weaker character, you've got, instead of, say, the example Skate, you've got Cherry Hunter, Adam's daughter. And I did like her, though, because there's more of an emphasis on combos in this game. So even though she didn't do as much damage, she's very swift. She could do a great dash attack. And I used her a lot, actually. She's might be my favourite new character, so she's pretty good. Also, a few levels in, you unlock Adam Hunter as well, and Adam was always my favourite in the original Streets of Rage game, and I always thought it was a shame that he never returned in Streets of Rage 2 and 3. All in all, as a long-standing fan of the franchise, I really enjoyed Streets of Rage 4. I thought it was very much a worthy addition. If I had any nitpicks to make, it'd be along the lines of, for my taste, there's a few too many environmental hazards, a few too many cheap deaths because you got juggled quite a lot by enemies, which could end up you getting knocked into a pit and straight up losing a life. Too many kind of pools of acid and lava, and yeah, there was a few times when I got hit a bit by a few enemies and you get juggled around a lot. So just because you got hit once by one enemy and you've got no control while you're flying around the air, you end up bouncing into a pit and losing a whole life, which I felt was a little bit cheap in places. There were some severe difficulty spikes in a few areas which really promoted some cheap deaths, which kind of got on my nerves. That said, when it comes down to recommending this title, I think it's a great game. However, I do think a lot of that will rest on if you're a general fan of the genre, fan of the franchise in particular. And I do also think that if you haven't got anyone to play with, I really don't think you're getting the most out of this game. You really need like a couch co-op, or at least to play online with one or two other people. That's where it's at its best. That's where it's at the most fun. But yeah, no, I'd recommend Streets of Rage 4. I'm not going to give it an arbitrary number rating because, number one, I don't really feel like that's my thing. Number two, like I said at the beginning of this review, I haven't really settled in a format yet. And if you can't tell by the awkward delivery of all this, I'm kind of making this up as I go. So, if you're a fan of the franchise, you probably bought it already. If you're on the fence, or you're not sure if you like the genre, maybe wait for a sale and see how you go there. But I liked it anyway. Thus ends my review of Streets of Rage 4 for Verde Broadcasting. If you want to see what this game is like being played, then myself and Comrade Jackson and Comrade Ivan are going to be setting up a Let's Play of it soon. And you can watch that as we live stream it, and you can see how truly inept I am at video games in real time. Also, we're toying with the idea of me being allowed to do more than one of these. So if any of you loyal followers have any suggestions in terms of what kind of games you might want to review, I mean, personally, I was thinking of doing some kind of older games or maybe some lesser known games that people might not have heard of before. More like a recommendation, really, of things I like. But anyway, leave your suggestions in the comments along with your abuse. That's all for now, and I hope you're all staying safe, you sexy people.
Partia